Hey there, I just finished recording a video with Nick Pollice where we take a look at strategies for leaders in this phase of the pandemic crisis. I think you're going to appreciate the real world examples he brings to the conversation. And of course, if you do, we'd love for you to like the video, to share, and subscribe to our channel. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to this edition of Reality Check Conversations. I'm Tanya Trivoni. Today I have with me Nick Pollice. Nick is a facilitator with Canadian Management Center. In fact, he's in his 28th year with us, and during that time, he's managed to accumulate over 25 years of experience across a diversity of industries, making him quite the expert in management and leadership, which is actually perfect for the conversation we want to have today around leading in this phase of our post-pandemic transition. You can read more about him using the link below this video. Nick, thanks so much for joining the conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya, for having me. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be here today to talk about a subject that is near and dear to me, and I think is very crucial to leaders in order to facilitate employees back into the workplace.
Absolutely. In fact, you and I have had some pretty interesting conversations given especially the coaching work you've been doing with managers and leaders, some of whom have been on the front lines of this, some of whom didn't have necessarily a lot of leadership experience prior to this crisis. And we've been talking about, what are some of the struggles that they're facing. So I thought a starting place might be to talk about, a couple of the things that folks are dealing with right now, and then we can segue the conversation into some strategies for addressing these obstacles.
Sure, that'd be fine. Fine. Yeah. So what I look at as we start moving into the reopening phase of COVID-19, and I call it post-COVID. This may be upon us much quicker than we think. And there's a number of companies suffering financially. There's a number of employees who want to get back to work. And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on governments at all levels to get people back to work and start making that transition back to work and taking that, what I call the calculated risk. And at this point in time, I'd like to mention that we've moved past phase one quite well, as the government has supplied through financial institutions some financial support. And we as leaders understand that people are transitioning or ready to transition back into the workplace, but there's also some psychological pieces that we need to deal with during this transition, such as low morale, anxiety, possibly low productivity, some skepticism, and something that I call survivor's remorse, because people are going to be coming back into the workplace. They may or may not be with the same employees they were with. Some employees may still be furloughed. The way they do jobs are going to be different. Social distancing is going to force people a little bit more in isolation. The use of personal protective equipment will now be mandatory. All those things are going to have some challenges with people.
Wow, that was a mouthful. I think you've summarized really nicely a broad range of challenges. I hear a lot around the morale piece, the burnout piece. I hadn't really thought about the remorse piece. That's very interesting. So given that picture that you just painted, and given the conversations you've been having with folks, I'm wondering if you have some suggestions, some strategies you can share right now.
Well, absolutely. I wrote a paper. It's being published July the 1st. It'll be out for public consumption in leadership post-COVID. And I talk about three phases. I talk about the phase of ending and letting go, phase two, managing the neutral zone, and stage three, the new beginning. And I think where we are right now is managing that neutral zone. And this is where employees coming back into work are feeling lost and are in need of some solid sense of direction. And to this end, I believe leadership communication is the key. Phase two is really centers around three important things. Number one is to provide consistent and timely feedback. Number two, set short-term goals. Put long-term goals on the back burner. And number three is look for quick wins and celebrate them as quickly as possible.
I love that. Can you say a little bit more about each? And I don't know if you have any specific examples to bring that to life would be great.
I do have a couple. Let's talk a little bit about focusing on those short-term goals. Focusing on short-term goals and quick wins give people a greater sense of momentum and purpose. Creating feedback mechanisms shape how people do their job, allows us to deal with failure, and we are going to fail. Allows us to deal with failure, pick ourselves up, and try again, and rethink how we work. And this is pretty crucial, because if you believe the Ipsos Reid poll that came out at the start of the month, 29% of all employees want to go back to work. 31% prefer to work from home, and 40% would prefer to work 2 days or less back in the workplace and do the balance at home. This puts a tremendous amount of stresses and strains on the leader as well as the employee in order to adapt to those nuances. And they're here to stay. And I've heard the term new normal replaced with the term now normal. And I think now normal is the perfect scenario, at least from what I'm looking at right now. If you look at some of the things that have happened with short-term goals and creativity and innovation, if you look at Best Buy is a North American company. They have now branched out into in-house advisory programs, technical support programs, and also health support systems for seniors living in senior residence and for also seniors living at home. Another piece of innovation and creativity, if you look at what the government just announced this morning, as of this morning is the 23rd of June, Westport Manufacturing, who's been in business since 1947, and their manufacturers of high-quality customized drapes and bedding, have now signed a 5-year deal with the Canadian government to supply high-quality masks as well as isolation gowns, effective next month. And they're going to be selling them out, not only supplying the Canadian government, they'll be also allowed, through their license, which they received a week ago, they'll be able to sell those gowns to the public at large. Those are perfect examples of reinventing yourself using short-term goals.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Those are great examples. And I think as difficult as this time has been, that's probably one of the top silver linings, in that so many of us, and this is true of our organization as well, have recognized how much more innovative we actually can be. And I love that piece around the now, because we don't really know 6 months from now what's happening. And so it's always reinventing ourselves given the information we need now. And that's really outside, I think, of a lot of leaders' comfort zone, right? We like to have the 3-year plan and the vision. So how do you create that sense of purpose and momentum just with working with what you know in the short term? So I think that's brilliant. Can you say a little bit more about the celebrating piece?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Stats Canada, let me go back. These are Statistics Canada's numbers. They're not mine. In a study conducted from March the 13th to June the 1st, these are the numbers. 67.6% increase in internet use, 42.7% increase in television use, 37.1% increase in domestic violence calls, 13.6% increase in alcohol use, and that's backed up by the LCBO, who has said that they've increased sales by over 90%, and a 6.9% increase in cannabis. This is caused by stress and anxiety. And when people come back into the workplace, mental anguish follows them, and it falls on the leader. And the leader, I had one leader say to me this morning, "Look, I'm not a counselor. I'm an engineer. This is what I do for a living." In order to engage people, intelligent, empathetic listening is critical. And quick wins provide focus and give people an opportunity to celebrate and get their mind on the positive. And people need that. You know, because one of the things that positive displacement, positive thinking does for us, it gives us what we crave the most: workplace survival. And it's one of the 6 basic needs, if you believe in what Tony Robbins teaches. So it's something that is important for us. And I tell leaders right now, and I had one fella say to me yesterday, but I got a 3-year plan. Put the 3-year plan out the window. Work on a 3-week plan, because it's all about survival right now. And you're going to fail along the way. I don't want you to think of failure, but I want you to be able to prevent failure and have a mental process in place that will allow your people to follow you. Because remember, when people need love and understanding the most is probably when they deserve it the least. Quick wins help that happen.
Okay, so you said a lot of good things there. I want to try to summarize. So you're talking about short-term goals. You're talking about the ability to sort of fail fast and learn from that and
Correct.
celebrate those wins. You give people a sense of purpose and motivation and a reason to be positive, which goes along with that empathetic listening, because a lot of people are turning to what sounds like unhealthy coping mechanisms. So at least if they can be finding that sense of purpose and motivation in the workforce, they're going to be further ahead.
Right.
Excellent points. Gosh, 10 minutes goes fast. As we go to wrap this up, any final words of wisdom or advice to add to what you've already said?
Well, one of the things I like to say for leaders, put your oxygen mask on first. Take care of yourself first, physically, mentally, spiritually, however you do that. And the key here is to think with a high level of empathetic intelligence and create a path forward for all to follow. To that end, communication for acceptance and participation will be part of the now normal. And we're going to have to communicate a lot more than what we do, and be empathetic significantly more than what we currently are.
Well, speaking of communication, thank you for contributing this to our communication and our conversation. That was really helpful. I really appreciate it, Nick.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The pleasure's mine.
And this concludes this edition of Reality Check Conversation. I'm sure you got something of value, so please take a moment to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much and have a great day.